Problems with the nebular hypothesis. Now, these are well-known problems, and they still have not been solved. Problems and criticism. The physics of accretion disks encounters some problems. The most important one is how the material, which is accreted by the protostar, loses its angular momentum. In other words, this is the angular momentum problem. If the material outside of the star formed from a disk, how did the disk become spheres? There's no mechanism for those spheres to lose their angular momentum and coalesce. That alone basically destroys the nebular hypothesis. Here's another problem. The formation of planetesimals is the biggest unsolved problem in the nebular disk model. That's a huge problem too. How 1 centimeter sized particles coalesce into 1 kilometer planetesimals is a mystery. It's because it doesn't happen. You have to have a star forming those planetesimals in its interior via deposition. But to establishment stars or fusion reactors, they couldn't possibly coalesce and clump matter together in their interiors. The formation of giant planets is also another unsolved problem. So far we have problem. Current theories are unable to explain how their cores can form fast enough to accumulate yada 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 yada. All this means that the nebular disk theory is wrong. Another problem of giant planet formation is their migration. Now they got another problem. And then they got another major critique from a 19th century person called James Clerk Maxwell. He's a pretty important guy who maintained that different rotation between the inner and outer parts of a ring could not allow for condensation of material. That is also true, Mr. Maxwell. You are spot on. So basically what we have here are problems, and critiques. Are these going to be addressed by establishment science? No. They're going to keep all these mysteries. The only way to solve these problems is to admit that they don't know what they're doing. But they're not going to admit that. They're gonna publish these problems onto Wikipedia pages and tell everybody, yes, we don't know how it works. Yet they won't ever say that they don't understand what they're doing. They'll admit that they don't know what they're doing, but then when you ask them, are there any real alternatives? They're like, no, there are no alternatives. There can't be an alternative. This has to be the way it happens. Yet it clearly doesn't happen that way. It's so weird how they can admit they don't know what they're doing and admit all the problems, yet not replace it. It's a very strange sequence of events. The only way to solve these problems, is to realize that the star cools and dies and becomes the planet. It's very easy to understand. Nowhere in this diagram is there a disk. The star is pinched together, born via a very powerful electromagnetic event. It gets really, really hot and big, and then it starts dying. And it cools and shrinks and reddens, eventually losing its spectrum and becoming a liquid solid star. But what establishment does is they call those planets. And then they question, well, how does a planet form? Why are we having so many problems with our nebular disk? Well, it's because you're assuming that a planet is mutually exclusive of a star, when the reality is the star is the new planet and the planet is the ancient dying star. Very, very, very old star. There you go. And the clumping together of the planetesimals, or whatever it is they want to claim, happens inside the star as it cools and dies. And as the outer layers get ripped away, it eventually exposes that little core called the planet, which continues to wander around the galaxy. It's very simple to understand. Very, very simple to understand. But they won't understand because they have some weird kind of cognitive dissonance thing going on with their nebular disk theory. They claim it doesn't work, but then they keep it. It just doesn't make any sense to me.